My name is Emily, and I'm 32 years old. I live in a quiet Ohio suburb with my 6-year-old daughter, Lily. Last week, my husband Nathan left for a business trip, and it was just me and Lily at home. That night, as I tucked her into bed, she grabbed my hand, trembling. Her tiny voice whispered, "Mommy, we have to run. Now." Her eyes were wide, clutching a crumpled drawing of a shadow outside our house. My heart raced. Was this her imagination or something real? Have you ever felt a child's fear hit you like a warning? I'd love to know where you're watching from. Like and subscribe to hear what happened next. I sat on the living room couch, the rain drumming softly against the windows. Lily's drawing lay in my lap, its jagged lines of a shadowy figure making my skin prickle. Her words echoed in my head, "We have to run." My thumb traced the crayon marks, and I tried to convince myself it was just a kid's overactive imagination. But her trembling hands, the way her voice cracked, it felt too real. I glanced at the clock. 9:30. Nathan would still be awake, probably in some hotel bar schmoozing clients. I grabbed my phone and dialed his number, needing his calm voice to ground me. He picked up on the third ring, his tone clipped. "Emily, I'm in the middle of a meeting. What's up?" I could hear glasses clinking in the background, the hum of voices. "A meeting, sure." I swallowed my throat tight. "It's Lily. She's scared, Nathan. She said we need to leave the house. Something about someone coming." I waited, expecting him to laugh it off or tell me to check the locks. Instead, he sighed, long and heavy. "She's 6M. Kids get nightmares. Just give her some milk and put her back to bed." His words were sharp, dismissive, like I was overreacting. I gripped the phone tighter, my stomach twisting. "Nathan," she was shaking. She drew this picture of someone outside. "It's not like her." He cut me off. "I'm dealing with enough here. Handle it okay. I'll call tomorrow." The line went dead. I stared at the phone, my chest hollow. He didn't even ask if we were okay. I set it down, my hands shaky, and looked around the room. The familiar clutter, Lily's toys scattered on the rug, the framed photo of us at the county fair. It all felt wrong now, like the house was holding its breath. I stood, forcing myself to move and check the front door. Locked. The windows. Secure. But when I reached the back door, my heart stopped. The knob turned too easily. It was unlocked, the door slightly ajar, letting in a sliver of damp night air. I froze, my pulse hammering. Had I left it open, I must have. I'd been distracted all day juggling laundry and Lily's homework. But the doubt gnawed at me. I pushed the door shut, locked it, and leaned against it, my breath shallow. The house was silent except for the rain, but it felt alive watching me. I grabbed Lily's drawing again, my eyes darting to the shadowy figure. Was it just a drawing, or had she seen something? My phone buzzed on the couch, and I jumped. A text from Clara, my neighbor across the street. "Saw your lights on. Everything okay over there?" I hesitated, my fingers hovering over the keyboard. Clara was sweet, always dropping off cookies or chatting about her garden, but I didn't want to sound paranoid. Still, I typed back Lily's spooked. Said something weird about needing to run. "You notice anything odd lately?" Her reply came fast. "Not tonight, but last week." I saw a car parked down the street. Not one I recognized. Guy just sat there for a while, then left. Probably nothing. My stomach dropped. A car. A stranger. I wanted to ask more, but my mind spiraled. Was it related? Or was I stitching together coincidences, letting Lily's fear infect me? I walked to the hallway, pausing outside Lily's room. Her door was cracked open, the unicorn nightlight casting a soft pink glow. I peeked in. She was curled up under her blanket, clutching her stuffed rabbit, her small chest rising and falling. She looked so fragile, so trusting, that I'd keep her safe. But Nathan's brush off the open door, Clara's text, they all swirled in my head, heavy and sharp. I slipped into the kitchen, needing something to do, and opened a drawer to put away some papers. My fingers brushed against something smooth, a photo tucked under a pile of receipts. I pulled it out, my breath catching. It was Nathan smiling at a company picnic last summer, his arm around Andrea, his co-worker. She was laughing, her head tilted toward him too close. I'd met her once at a work event. She'd been charming, but her eyes lingered on Nathan a little too long. I'd brushed it off then, but now, with him gone with Lily's warning, the photo felt like a splinter under my skin. I shoved it back in the drawer, my hands trembling. Was I being ridiculous? Nathan worked late sometimes, sure, but an affair? No. He wouldn't, but the doubt clung to me sticky and cold. I glanced at the back door again, my mind racing. An unlocked door, a strange car, a photo I couldn't unsee, and Lily, my brave, scared little girl, whispering that we had to run. I wanted to scoop her up and drive to Hannah's, but what if I was wrong? What if I was scaring her for nothing? I sank onto a kitchen chair. The photo's image burned into my mind. The rain grew louder, pounding now, and I felt the walls closing in. Something was off, and I couldn't shake it. I needed answers, but where to start? The basement. Nathan kept his tools down there, his private space. If there was anything to find, it'd be there. I stood, my heart thudding, and grabbed a flashlight. The stairs creaked under my feet as I descended, the air growing colder, heavier. I wasn't sure what I was looking for, but I couldn't stop now. Mom. The basement smelled of damp concrete and old paint, the kind of musty air that clung to your clothes. My flashlight beam cut through the dark, bouncing off stacks of cardboard boxes and Nathan's workbench. I hadn't been down here in months, maybe a year. This was his domain, where he'd tinker with tools or fix Lily's bike. But tonight, it felt foreign, like I was trespassing. My heart thumped as I moved deeper, the floorboards creaking under my sneakers. I wasn't sure what I expected to find, but the weight of Lily's fear pushed me forward. I started with the workbench, cluttered with screwdrivers and jars of nails. My fingers brushed over a metal toolbox, heavier than I remembered. I lifted the lid, expecting rusty wrenches, but inside was a small, locked wooden box I'd never seen before. It was smooth, polished out of place among the grime. My stomach twisted. Nathan never mentioned this. I shook it gently, hearing a faint rattle, but there was no key in sight. I set it down, my hands clammy, and rummaged through the drawers, finding nothing but old receipts and a half-empty pack of gum. The flashlight flickered, and I cursed under my breath, smacking it against my palm. The beam steadied, but the shadows seemed to shift, playing tricks on my eyes. I turned to the shelves, scanning dusty camping gear and boxes labeled Christmas. One box tucked behind a broken lamp caught my attention. It was unmarked, the tape peeling. I pulled it down my arms, straining, and pried it open. Inside were stacks of papers, bank statements, and a leather notebook. My breath hitched. Nathan handled our finances, always saying he'd take care of it. I flipped through the notebook, my eyes catching numbers, dates, and names I didn't recognize. One page had Marcus scrawled in Nathan's handwriting, underlined twice with a dollar amount, $10,000. My knees wobbled, and I leaned against the shelf. Marcus. Who was he? A client? A friend? The name didn't ring a bell, but the figure made my chest tighten. We weren't rich, scraping by on Nathan's sales job and my part-time gig at the library. $10,000 was a fortune, money we didn't have. I stuffed the notebook in my pocket, my mind racing. Was this why Lily was scared? Had she overheard something I needed to talk to her to understand what she knew? I climbed the stairs, the locked box still nagging at me, and slipped into Lily's room. She was awake now, sitting up in bed, her stuffed rabbit clutched tight. The unicorn nightlight cast soft shadows across her face, her eyes wide and glassy. "Mommy," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "Did you see him?" I knelt beside her, my heart pounding. "See who, sweetheart?" She pointed to the window, her finger trembling. "The man. He was outside last night. He talked through the glass." My blood ran cold. I forced a calm smile, brushing her hair back. "What did he say?" "Lily." She swallowed, her small body tensing. "He said, we have to go or he'll come in." He sounded mad. I pulled her close, her warmth grounding me, but my mind screamed. A man at her window, talking to her. I kissed her forehead, whispering, "You're safe now. I'm here." But I wasn't sure I believed it. I stood, my legs shaky, and checked the window. The lock was secure, but I noticed something new. A faint scratch on the sill, like someone had pried at it with a tool. My stomach lurched. I hadn't seen this before. Was it old new? I ran my finger over it, the rough edge biting my skin. Lily watched me, her eyes searching mine for reassurance I couldn't give. "Stay here," I said, grabbing my phone. "I'm just going to check something." In the hallway, I dialed Hannah, my sister. She answered on the first ring, her voice groggy but sharp. It's late. You okay?" I paced, keeping my voice low. "Lily's saying someone was at her window last night talking to her. I found a scratch on the sill, and Nathan's got this locked box in the basement and some notebook with a name Marcus and money owed." "I don't know what's happening." The words spilled out, frantic. Hannah paused, then said, "You need to listen to her, Em. Kids know things. I was like that once. Remember, I told Mom about that creepy neighbor, and she didn't believe me until it was almost too late." Her words hit hard. Hannah had been 9 when she warned our mom about a neighbor watching our house. Mom brushed it off, but weeks later, the guy was arrested for breaking into another home. I gripped the phone, my throat tight. "What do I do? Hannah, Nathan's not here, and I'm freaking out." She didn't hesitate. "Pack a bag and come to my place. Now. You and Lily can stay here." I wanted to agree to run, but something held me back. This was our home. I couldn't just leave without knowing what was going on. I hung up, my mind spinning, and went to Lily's closet to grab her backpack. As I reached for her coat, my foot nudged something under the bed. I knelt, shining my flashlight. It was a toy car, small and blue with chipped paint. Lily didn't play with cars. She loved dolls, unicorns, anything sparkly. I picked it up, my fingers trembling. It didn't belong here. Had someone been in her room? My chest tightened, the air too thick to breathe. I slipped the car into my pocket next to the notebook and stood, my resolve hardening. I needed to know what Lily saw, what she heard. And I needed to know who Marcus was and why Nathan was hiding things from me. The basement, the scratch, the car, they were pieces of a puzzle, and I was starting to see the edges. But the picture was still blurry, and it scared me more than I could say. I stood in the hallway, the toy car heavy in my pocket, its chipped blue paint, a silent accusation. My fingers curled around the leather notebook, Nathan's scrawl of Marcus burning in my mind. The house felt too quiet, the kind of quiet that presses against your ears, making every creak sound like a threat. I glanced at Lily's door, her soft breathing barely audible over the rain's steady beat. I wanted to wake her to ask more about the man at her window, but she needed sleep. I needed answers. I crept back to the basement, the flashlight's beam wobbling in my shaky hand. The locked wooden box sat on Nathan's workbench, mocking me. I grabbed a screwdriver, my jaw tight, and pried at the lock. The wood splintered, but it didn't budge. Frustration boiled in my chest. What was Nathan hiding? Money secrets, another life. I slammed the screwdriver down, the clang echoing in the damp air. My eyes landed on the unmarked box I'd found earlier, the one with bank statements and that notebook. I pulled it onto the floor, papers spilling out like confessions. The statements were from an account I didn't know we had under Nathan's name alone. Large withdrawals, thousands of dollars dated over the past 6 months. My stomach churned. We'd been pinching pennies, skipping date nights, telling Lily no to new toys, while Nathan was draining this account. For what? I flipped through the notebook again, finding more names: Andrea Marcus, someone called Ray. Each had numbers next to them, like a ledger. My hands shook as I read Andrea's name, the memory of her arm around Nathan in that photo cutting deeper now. Was she part of this? Was she why he was so distant, brushing off Lily's fear like it was nothing I needed to talk to someone who'd seen Nathan outside his polished work persona? Clara's text about the stranger's car flashed in my mind. She'd mentioned seeing Nathan argue with a man in our driveway weeks ago. I grabbed my phone and called her, my voice low to avoid waking Lily. "Clara, it's Emily," I whispered when she answered, her voice groggy but alert. "You said you saw Nathan arguing with someone. What did the guy look like? Did you hear anything?" Clara paused, and I could hear her shifting, probably sitting up in bed. It was maybe 3 weeks ago, early evening. I was watering my roses. The guy was tall, scruffy, wearing a dark jacket. I didn't catch much, but Nathan was pissed, kept saying, "You'll get it, just wait." The guy laughed, said something about a deadline, then drove off. My throat tightened. "A deadline? Marcus?" I pressed her. "Did you see his car? Anything else?" Clara hesitated. "It was a beat-up sedan gray, I think." "Emily, what's going on? You sound scared." I swallowed, my mouth dry. "I don't know yet. Thanks, Clara. I'll call you tomorrow." I hung up before she could ask more, my mind racing. A scruffy guy, a gray sedan, a deadline. It matched the car Clara saw parked down the street last week. My chest felt like it was caving in. Nathan wasn't just hiding money or flirting with Andrea. He was tangled in something dangerous. Something that had a man whispering threats through Lily's window. I needed more. I opened our security camera app, the one Nathan insisted we install last year after a neighbor's car was stolen. My fingers trembled as I scrolled to the past week's footage. The app loaded slowly, the spinning wheel taunting me. When it finally opened, my heart sank. The last 2 nights, including tonight, showed no recordings, just a blank screen with file not found. I refreshed, my pulse hammering, but nothing changed. Nathan had access to the app. Had he deleted the footage? Why anger surged through me, hot and sharp. He was supposed to protect us, to be the one I leaned on, and now I was digging through his secrets, chasing shadows in our own home. I shoved the papers back into the box, my hands clumsy, and stood, the basement air thick with a faint, unfamiliar smell. I froze, sniffing again. Cigarette smoke, stale and acrid. Neither of us smoked. My skin prickled, the hairs on my arms standing up. I swung the flashlight around, half expecting someone to step out of the shadows, but the room was empty. Still, the smell lingered, like an intruder's fingerprint. My phone buzzed in my pocket, startling me. Another text from Clara. "Just remembered. The guy in the driveway had a scar on his cheek. Left side. Be careful, Emily." A scar. My mind flashed to Lily's trembling voice, her fear of the man at her window. Was it the same guy? I clutched the phone, my knuckles white, and headed upstairs, the smell of smoke trailing me like a ghost. Every step felt heavier, the weight of Nathan's lies pressing down. I didn't know who Marcus was or what he wanted, but I knew one thing. My daughter was scared, and my husband was at the center of it. I reached the kitchen, my eyes darting to the back door, still locked, but no longer safe. Whatever Nathan had done, it was coming for us, and I wasn't ready. I stood frozen in the kitchen, Clara's text about the scarred man searing my thoughts. The faint cigarette smell from the basement clung to my clothes, a reminder that someone or something had been here. My eyes locked on the back door, its deadbolt now a flimsy promise of safety. I wanted to grab Lily and run to Hannah's, but my legs wouldn't move. The house, our home, felt like a trap, and Nathan's secrets were the bait. I shoved my phone into my pocket next to the toy car and notebook and forced myself to act. I needed to see the backyard to check for any sign of the man Lily saw. The rain had slowed to a drizzle, leaving the air thick and cold. I grabbed a jacket, slipped on my boots, and stepped outside, the porch light flickering like it was gasping for life. The backyard was dark, the swing set's silhouette swaying slightly in the breeze. My flashlight swept across the grass, revealing muddy patches near Lily's bedroom window. I crouched, my heart thudding, and saw them, footprints deep and deliberate, pressed into the soil. They were large, too big for me, with a jagged tread pattern. My breath caught. Someone had been here, standing outside my daughter's room, close enough to whisper through the glass. I followed the prints, my boots sinking into the mud, until they stopped at the bushes lining the fence. I pushed the branches aside, my hands trembling, and found a crumpled piece of paper half buried in the dirt. I unfolded it, the ink smudged but readable. Leave before it's too late. My stomach lurched. The words were scrawled in black pen, uneven, like they'd been written in a hurry. I turned the paper over and froze. It was a receipt from a gas station near Nathan's office, dated 2 days ago. His name wasn't on it, but he stopped there all the time, always complaining about their overpriced coffee. Was this his or someone else's, left here to taunt me? My mind spun, the receipt's weight heavier than the notebook in my pocket. I stuffed it into my jacket, my fingers numb, and scanned the yard again. The fence was intact, no broken slats, but the gate at the side of the house was unlatched, swaying slightly. I hadn't checked it earlier. Had it been open all night, I ran to it, my boots slipping, and slammed it shut, the latch clicking with a hollow sound. My chest heaved, anger and fear tangling inside me. Nathan should have been here, fixing this, protecting us. Instead, he was halfway across the country, hiding bank accounts and names like Marcus and Andrea, leaving me to face this alone. I went back inside, locking the door behind me, and dialed the police. My voice shaking as I explained the footprints, the note, the toy car. The officer on the line was polite but skeptical, his tone clipped. "Ma'am, it sounds unsettling, but without a clear threat or evidence of a break-in, there's not much we can do. Kids leave toys around. Notes could be a prank. We'll send a patrol car by tomorrow." Tomorrow? I gripped the phone, my knuckles white. My daughter's terrified. Someone was outside her window. He sighed. "Lock your doors and stay vigilant. Call if anything escalates." The line went dead, and I wanted to scream. Vigilant. I was already jumping at shadows, and they were telling me to wait. I sank onto the couch, the receipt and notebook burning holes in my pockets. The police wouldn't help. Nathan wouldn't answer. Clara was asleep by now, and Hannah was an hour away. It was just me, and the walls felt like they were closing in. I thought of Lily, her small body curled up in bed, trusting me to keep her safe. But how could I, when every new clue pointed to Nathan's betrayal? The money, the names, the deleted footage? Now this note? It was all connected, and he was at the center. I'd trusted him with our lives, our home, our daughter, and he'd built a web of lies around us. My phone buzzed, snapping me out of my spiral. It was a notification from our bank, an alert I'd set up months ago but forgotten about. A withdrawal $2,000 from that secret account processed an hour ago. My blood ran cold. Nathan was in Chicago, or so he'd said. Was he moving money now in the middle of the night? Or was someone else using his account? I logged into the banking app, my fingers clumsy, but the account was locked. My access denied. A message flashed. Contact account holder for authorization. Nathan. He'd cut me out even from this. Rage surged through me hotter than the fear. He wasn't just hiding things. He was erasing me, leaving me defenseless while some scarred man stalked our home. I stood pacing the living room, my hands clenched. The receipt, the footprints, the locked box, they weren't random. They were warnings, and Nathan knew more than he'd ever admitted. I wanted to call him, to scream, to demand the truth, but what good would it do? He'd lie, or worse, say nothing. I stopped by the window, staring into the dark, the rain picking up again. Something moved near the fence, a shadow shifting just beyond the porch light's reach. My heart stopped. Was it him? The man with the scar? I backed away, my breath shallow, the note's words echoing. Leave before it's too late. I stumbled back from the window, my heart slamming against my ribs. The shadow by the fence vanished, swallowed by the rain-soaked dark, but my skin crawled like it was still watching. The note's words burned in my mind. Leave before it's too late. I clutched the couch arm, my legs unsteady, and forced myself to breathe. Lily was upstairs asleep, vulnerable. I couldn't freeze now. I grabbed a kitchen knife from the counter, its weight cold and solid in my hand, and tiptoed to the stairs. Every creak of the floorboards felt like a scream in the silence. As I reached the hallway, a soft thud came from the front door, like something brushing against it. My stomach dropped. I gripped the knife tighter, my knuckles aching, and crept toward the sound. The peephole showed nothing but the empty porch rain streaking the glass. I held my breath, listening. Another sound, sharper now, a faint scrape like metal on wood. Someone was out there, testing the lock. My mind raced. The police wouldn't come until tomorrow. Hannah was too far. It was just me. I backed away, my eyes darting to Lily's room. I had to get her out somewhere safe, but the thought of opening the door, of facing whatever was outside, paralyzed me. I hurried to her room, knife still in hand, and slipped inside. She was still asleep, her small body curled under the blanket, oblivious to the storm inside me. I knelt beside her, my hand hovering over her shoulder, but I couldn't wake her yet. Not until I knew what we were running from. The thud came again, louder from downstairs. My heart lurched. It wasn't the wind or a branch. It was deliberate, insistent. I stood, my breath shallow, and moved to the closet, easing the door open. I lifted Lily blanket and all her warmth heavy against my chest, and tucked her inside behind a pile of clothes. Stay quiet, sweetheart, I whispered, my voice trembling. Her eyes fluttered, but didn't open. I closed the door, leaving a crack, and gripped the knife, my palms sweaty. If someone was coming in, they wouldn't find her. I crept downstairs, the knife raised every step, a battle against the fear clawing my chest. The living room was dark, the rain a dull roar outside. I reached the front door, my hand shaking as I checked the lock. It held firm, but the scraping sound came again now from the back of the house. I spun around, my flashlight beam cutting through the gloom, and moved toward the kitchen. The back door was still locked, but the sound was closer, like nails dragging across glass. I peered through the window, my breath fogging the pane, and saw nothing but the swaying trees. Then a shadow moved tall and deliberate just beyond the porch. My phone buzzed in my pocket, shattering the silence. I fumbled to silence it, my hands clumsy, and saw Clara's name on the screen. Her text read, "Emily. I'm outside. Saw a guy go into your house through the side gate. I'm calling the cops." My blood ran cold. He was inside. Not outside, not testing the door, but here in my home. My eyes darted to the hallway, the stairs, the shadows pooling in every corner. The knife felt useless now, a child's toy against the terror flooding me. A floorboard creaked upstairs, slow and heavy, not Lily's soft steps. My heart stopped. He was in the house, moving toward her room. I wanted to scream, to run, but my body locked up the knife, trembling in my grip. Then, a low hum drifted down a tune I knew too well. Nathan used to sing it to Lily when she was a baby, a lullaby about stars and dreams. My stomach twisted, bile rising in my throat. Was it Nathan? No, he was in Chicago. But the humming grew louder, closer, and I realized with sickening clarity that whoever was here knew us, knew our lives, our songs. I forced my legs to move, inching up the stairs. The knife raised my pulse, roaring in my ears. The humming stopped, replaced by soft footsteps in the hallway. I reached the top, my flashlight beam shaking, and saw a figure, tall and broad, standing outside Lily's room. He was holding something metallic, glinting in the dim light. My breath caught a silent scream trapped in my chest. He turned his face, half hidden in shadow, and I saw it, a scar, jagged and pale, running down his left cheek. Clara's warning flashed in my mind. The man from the driveway, the one Nathan argued with, was here in my house, steps from my daughter. The scarred man's eyes locked onto mine, and time seemed to stop, the air thick with the weight of his presence. He didn't move, didn't speak, just stood there, the metallic object in his hand, catching the faint glow of my flashlight. My body screamed to run, to grab Lily and bolt, but my feet were rooted to the floor, the knife trembling uselessly. His lips curled into a slow, crooked smile, like he knew exactly how terrified I was. "You're Emily," he said, his voice low, gravelly, like he'd smoked a lifetime's worth of cigarettes. "Nathan's wife." My mouth went dry, his words slicing through me. He knew my name, my husband's name. This wasn't random. I forced my voice out, barely a whisper.
"Oh, who are you? What do you want?"
He stepped closer, the floor creaking under his boots, and I backed up my shoulder, hitting the wall. The knife shook in my grip, but I held it up, a frail barrier between us. He tilted his head, studying me like I was a puzzle he'd already solved.
"Name's Marcus,"
he said, twirling the metallic object, a small crowbar, between his fingers. "Nathan and I go way back." "He didn't tell you about me, did he?" My heart sank, the notebook's scrawl flashing in my mind. Marcus, the $10,000, the man Nathan owed. I shook my head, my throat tight, unable to form words. Marcus chuckled, a sound that made my skin crawl. "Figures. He's good at keeping secrets, like this house. Like Andrea. Andrea." Her name hit like a punch, the photo of her and Nathan burning in my memory. I wanted to scream, to demand answers, but Marcus kept talking, his voice casual, like we were chatting over coffee. "Nathan's been playing a long game, Emily. Debts piling up, promises he couldn't keep. He thought he could skip town, start fresh with her. Leave you and the kid behind." He nodded toward Lily's door, and my blood ran cold. he knew about Lily. My mind reeled pieces falling into place with sickening clarity. The secret account, the withdrawals, the deleted footage, it wasn't just money troubles. Nathan was planning to abandon us, to run off with Andrea, leaving me to face this man, this debt alone. My chest ached, a raw, tearing pain as the life I'd built with Nathan crumbled in my head. The county fair, our late-night talks, the way he'd kiss Lily's forehead, all tainted, all lies. I wanted to believe Marcus was wrong, that Nathan wouldn't do this. But the truth was, in Marcus's smirk in the crowbar, he tapped against his palm. He took another step, closing the gap, and I pressed harder against the wall, the knife wobbling. "Where's Nathan?" I managed, my voice cracking. Marcus shrugged, his eyes glinting with something dark amused. "Chicago, maybe. Or maybe he's already gone. Told me he'd pay up last month, but I'm still waiting. So I came to collect. From you." His gaze flicked to Lily's room again, and my stomach twisted, a mother's instinct roaring over the betrayal. He wasn't just here for money. He was here to hurt us, to punish Nathan through me. I opened my mouth to speak, to beg, but a soft whimper came from the closet behind Lily's door. My heart stopped. Lily. She was awake, listening, terrified. Marcus's head snapped toward the sound, his smile widening. "That's the kid, huh? Nathan said she's a sweet one." My vision blurred, tears of rage and fear burning my eyes. He knew too much, had planned this, had watched us. The humming, the lullaby, it wasn't a coincidence. He'd been in our lives, lurking, waiting for this moment. My phone vibrated in my pocket, probably Clara or the police, but I couldn't move, couldn't look away from Marcus. He leaned closer, the crowbar dangling loosely in his hand, his breath sour with smoke. "Nathan thought he could outsmart me, but he's not here, is he? You are, and I'm done waiting." His words were a blade cutting through the last shred of hope I had. Nathan wasn't coming to save us. He'd built this mess, this danger, and left me to drown in it. My love for him, my trust. It was all ash, now scattered by the man standing in my hallway. I glanced at Lily's door, the crack of the closet visible, her small form hidden inside. My heart pounded, a deafening drum in my chest. Marcus followed my gaze, his smile turning predatory. "Let's make this quick," he said, raising the crowbar slightly. "Tell me where Nathan stashed the money, or I start looking myself." His eyes bored into mine, cold and unyielding, and I felt my world collapse, the weight of Nathan's betrayal and Marcus's threat crushing me. I was alone, cornered, with no way out, and my daughter's life hanging by a thread. Marcus's words hung in the air, sharp and heavy, his crowbar glinting as he loomed in the hallway. Lily's whimper from the closet pierced my heart, and for a moment I felt like I was falling, the world crumbling under me, but her small, scared sound snapped something awake inside. I wasn't just Nathan's wife, the woman he'd lied to and left behind. I was Lily's mom, and I'd be damned if this man, this stranger, took her safety from me. My grip on the knife tightened, my fear hardening into something else, something fierce. I straightened, meeting Marcus's cold eyes, my voice low but steady. "You're not getting anything from me." His smirk faltered just for a second, and I seized it. Stepping forward, the knife still raised. "Nathan's not here, and I don't know where your money is, but you're not touching my daughter." My words surprised me, each one a brick in a wall I was building between us and him. Marcus tilted his head, amused, but his grip on the crowbar tightened. "Brave words," he said, his voice mocking. "But Nathan left you in this mess. You think you can scare me off?" I didn't answer, my mind racing. I needed to get him away from Lily's room, to buy time. The police were coming thanks to Clara, but they weren't here yet. I had to act now. I took a slow step toward the stairs, my eyes locked on his. "If you want money, it's downstairs." I lied, my voice firm despite the tremor in my chest. In the basement, Nathan kept a safe. His eyes narrowed, searching mine for the bluff. But I held his gaze, willing him to believe me. He glanced at Lily's door, then back at me, weighing his options. "Show me," he said, finally gesturing with the crowbar. "And no tricks." My heart pounded, but I nodded, moving toward the stairs, my body shielding the path to Lily's room. Every step down felt like a gamble, the knife still in my hand, my mind scrambling for a plan. The basement was a dead end, but it was far from Lily, and that was enough for now. Marcus followed, his boots heavy on the steps, the crowbar dangling like a threat. The air grew colder, the faint cigarette smell from earlier hitting me again, but I pushed it aside, focusing on the moment. At the bottom, I flicked on the light, the bulb buzzing faintly. The workbench, the scattered papers, the locked box, they were all there unchanged, but now they felt like pieces of a battlefield. I pointed to a corner where an old filing cabinet sat rusted and forgotten. "It's in there," I said, my voice steady, praying he'd take the bait. Marcus stepped forward, his eyes scanning the room, and I inched toward the workbench, my free hand brushing the screwdriver I'd used earlier. He knelt by the cabinet, yanking at the drawers, the metal screeching. "This better not be a game," he muttered, his back to me. My pulse raced, adrenaline flooding my veins. This was my chance, my only shot to shift the balance. I tightened my grip on the knife, my other hand closing around the screwdriver. I wasn't a fighter, never had been, but for Lily, I'd do anything. I took a silent step closer, my breath shallow, every nerve screaming to act, to protect. Marcus yanked another drawer open, the metal screeching, as he rifled through old tax forms, oblivious to my slow approach. My fingers tightened around the screwdriver, its cold steel grounding me, while the knife in my other hand felt like an extension of my resolve. The basement air was thick, the flickering bulb casting jagged shadows, but my fear was shrinking, replaced by a clarity I hadn't felt all night. This was my house, my daughter, my life, and I wasn't letting Marcus or Nathan's lies take that from me. I took another step, my boots silent on the concrete, my eyes fixed on the back of his neck. The plan was simple: distract him, shove him into the cabinet, and bolt the door. It wasn't perfect, but it was enough to keep him away from Lily until help arrived. My heart thudded, not with panic now, but with purpose. I glanced at the stairs, calculating the distance, then back at Marcus. He was muttering, tossing papers aside, growing frustrated. "Good. Let him lose focus." I cleared my throat, my voice steady despite the adrenaline. "It's in the bottom drawer," I said, pointing with the knife, my tone calm, almost bored. He grunted, bending lower, his crowbar clattering against the cabinet. "My chance!" I lunged, slamming the screwdriver's handle against his shoulder. Not hard enough to wound, but enough to startle. He stumbled, cursing, and I shoved with all my weight, pushing him into the open drawer. The cabinet rocked, papers spilling, and I darted for the stairs, my breath ragged but fierce. Marcus roared, scrambling to his feet, but I was faster, my legs pumping as I reached the door. I slammed it shut, my hands shaking as I slid the rusty bolt into place. It groaned, but held the sound of his fists pounding the wood, echoing in the stairwell. "You'll regret this," he shouted, his voice muffled but venomous. I leaned against the door, my chest heaving, the knife and screwdriver still clutched tight. For a moment, I felt a rush of triumph, a spark of who I used to be before Nathan's secrets dimmed me. But it wasn't over. I needed to get Lily out now. I ran upstairs, my boots slipping on the hardwood, and burst into her room. The closet door was still cracked, her small form huddled inside. I knelt, dropping the knife and screwdriver, and pulled her into my arms, her warmth steadying me. "We're leaving, sweetheart," I whispered, brushing her hair back. Her eyes were wide, tear-streaked, but she nodded, trusting me completely. That trust so pure fueled me more than any anger. I grabbed her backpack, stuffing it with clothes and her stuffed rabbit, then scooped her up, her arms tight around my neck. My phone buzzed again, and I glanced at it, Clara saying the police were 5 minutes out. 5 minutes? We could make it. I hurried downstairs, avoiding the basement door where Marcus's banging had slowed, and grabbed my keys and wallet from the kitchen. The front door loomed ahead, a promise of safety, but I paused, my hand on the knob. Leaving meant facing Nathan's betrayal head-on, untangling his lies, rebuilding without him. It scared me, but not as much as staying. I opened the door, the cold night air hitting my face, and stepped onto the porch, Lily clinging to me. The rain had stopped the street quiet, except for the distant hum of a car. I set Lily down, holding her hand, and started for my car parked in the driveway. But my eyes caught something in the living room through the window, a glint on the couch where I'd sat earlier, paralyzed by fear. I squinted, my heart skipping. It was Nathan's old phone, one he'd claimed to lose months ago, half hidden under a cushion. I hesitated, Lily tugging at my hand, but I couldn't ignore it. I told her to wait by the car, her small figure illuminated by the porch light, and darted back inside. My fingers closed around the phone, its screen cracked but alive. I powered it on, my pulse racing, and a flood of texts loaded, all from Andrea. Meet me tonight. It's time to go. She'll never know. My stomach twisted, each word a dagger. Nathan hadn't just lied. He'd planned to vanish, to leave us to Marcus's wrath, to start over with her. I slipped the phone into my pocket, my jaw tight, and ran back to Lily, lifting her into the car. As I buckled her in, my phone rang, Hannah's name flashing. I answered, my voice low. We're out. I locked him in the basement. Police are coming. She exhaled, relief clear. Get to my place, Em. I'm waiting. I nodded, even though she couldn't see, and hung up my hands steady on the wheel. I glanced at Lily in the rearview mirror, her eyes meeting mine, full of questions, but also faith. I reached back, squeezing her hand, and started the engine. The car hummed to life, the headlights cutting through the dark. I pulled out of the driveway, the house shrinking behind us, its secrets exposed, but not yet buried. Marcus was trapped for now. Nathan's phone burned in my pocket, proof of his betrayal, but also my leverage. I wasn't the woman who'd cowered hours ago, waiting for someone to save her. I'd fought, I'd protected, and I'd chosen to walk away. As we drove, the streetlights blurred, and I felt a quiet strength settle in my chest. I looked at Lily again, her small hand clutching her rabbit, and nodded to myself. This was my beginning, and I was ready. The car's headlights sliced through the early morning fog as I drove toward Hannah's house, Lily silent in the back seat, her stuffed rabbit pressed against her cheek. The adrenaline from locking Marcus in the basement had faded, leaving a dull ache in my chest. Nathan's old phone sat in the cup holder, its cracked screen a quiet accusation. Those texts from Andrea, his plan to vanish, they looped in my mind, each word a fresh wound. But I'd gotten us out. That had to count for something. Hannah's porch light glowed as I pulled into her driveway, the small ranch house, a beacon in the gray dawn. She was waiting at the door, her hair, messy eyes wide with worry. I carried Lily inside her small body, heavy with sleep, and set her on the guest room bed, tucking a quilt around her. Hannah didn't ask questions, just handed me a mug of coffee, her hand lingering on my shoulder. You're here. That's enough for now, she said, her voice soft but firm. I knotted my throat too tight to speak and sank onto her couch, the mug warming my hands. The quiet of her living room felt foreign too, calm after the chaos of the night. I stared at the coffee, its steam curling, and felt the weight of what I'd done settle in. I'd trapped a dangerous man in my basement, fled my home, and carried proof of Nathan's betrayal in my pocket. But the victory was hollow. My life, the one I'd built with Nathan, was unraveling, and I didn't know where the threads ended. I sipped the coffee bitter on my tongue and pulled out my phone to check for updates. A text from Clara police are at your house. They've got him. Call me when you can. Relief washed over me, but it was fleeting, chased by a deeper unease. Marcus was caught, but Nathan was still out there, his lies untouched. I set the mug down and opened Nathan's old phone, the texts from Andrea glowing in the dim light. I scrolled further, my stomach knotting. Messages about meeting points, a new apartment, a life without complications. That's what I was to him, what Lily was. A complication. My hands shook, not with anger now, but with a raw, aching betrayal. I'd loved him, trusted him, built a family with him, and he'd been planning to erase us. The phone slipped from my fingers, landing softly on the couch, and I pressed my palms to my eyes, trying to hold back the tears. Hannah sat beside me, her presence steady. "What did you find?" she asked, her voice gentle, like she already knew. I handed her the phone, unable to say it out loud. She read in silence, her jaw tightening, and when she looked at me, her eyes were fierce. "He doesn't deserve you, Em. Or Lily." Her words were a lifeline, but they couldn't fill the hole Nathan had left. I nodded, my voice barely a whisper. "I know, but it still hurts." She squeezed my hand, then stood, grabbing her laptop from the kitchen table.
We need to protect you both. Now. She opened a browser, pulling up a lawyer's website, someone named Sarah she'd met through work. She's good with custody cases, restraining orders, all of it. I'll call her first thing.
I watched her, grateful but numb, my mind stuck on Lily asleep in the next room. She'd been so brave, her warning saving us, but what had it cost her? Her home, her sense of safety, her father. Guilt gnawed at me sharp and relentless. I'd acted, but had I failed her by not seeing Nathan's lies sooner? The doorbell rang, soft but startling, and I flinched, my nerves still raw. Hannah glanced at me, then went to answer it. It was Clara, her coat damp from the morning mist, her face pale but determined. "I came as soon as the police left," she said, stepping inside. "They've got Marcus in custody, trespassing for now." He wouldn't talk, but they found a knife in his pocket, not just that crowbar. My stomach twisted, the reality of how close we'd come, hitting hard. A knife. If I hadn't moved him to the basement, if Lily hadn't been hidden. What might have happened? Clara sat across from me, her hands clasped tight. I told them everything I saw, the car, the argument with Nathan. "They're looking for him now, Em." Her voice was steady, but her eyes searched mine like she was waiting for me to break. I didn't. Not yet. "Thank you," I said, my voice hoarse. "For calling them. For seeing him." She nodded, but her expression shifted, hesitant. "There's something else. When they searched Marcus, they found a note. It had your address and a date. Tomorrow." My breath caught the room tilting. Tomorrow. Nathan's business trip was supposed to end in 2 days, but Marcus had planned to come back, maybe to hurt us, maybe to take something Nathan hid. I looked at Hannah, then Clara, their faces mirroring my dread. The police had Marcus, but Nathan's shadow still loomed, his secrets tying me to a danger I couldn't escape. I leaned back, my body heavy, the coffee cold in my hands. I'd fought to protect Lily, but the cost was staring me down, and it felt like the ground was slipping away again. Clara's words hung in the air, the note with my address, and tomorrow's date, a silent bomb. I stared at the coffee table, its worn edges blurring as my mind churned. Hannah closed her laptop, her movements sharp, like she was trying to outrun the tension. Clara shifted in her seat, her hands twisting together, waiting for me to say something. But I had nothing. The weight of Marcus's arrest, Nathan's phone, and now this note pressed down, squeezing the air from my lungs. I'd fought to keep Lily safe, but every step forward revealed a new cut deeper than the last. I stood needing to move and walked to the guest room door, cracking it open. Lily was still asleep, her small hand curled around her rabbit's ear, her face soft in the dim light. I leaned against the frame, my chest tight. She didn't know about the note or Marcus's knife or her father's plans to leave us, but she'd feel it in the way our life was shifting, in the way I couldn't smile the same. I closed the door softly and turned back to Hannah and Clara, their eyes on me, careful, like I might shatter. "I need to call that lawyer," I said, my voice flat, almost foreign. Hannah nodded, grabbing her phone to find Sarah's number. "She's good, Em. She'll make sure you and Lily are protected." Her tone was firm, but her glance flickered, betraying her own fear. Clara cleared her throat, her voice hesitant. "I can stay with you today if you want, or watch Lily while you figure things out." I met her eyes, her kindness, a lifeline I didn't deserve. "Thanks," I said, but it felt hollow, like I was borrowing strength I couldn't repay. I sat back down, my hands cold despite the mug's lingering warmth. Hannah dialed Sarah, putting her on speaker. The lawyer's voice was crisp, professional, cutting through the fog in my head. Emily Hannah filled me in. "With Marcus in custody and Nathan's whereabouts unclear, we can file for a restraining order and start on custody. You'll need to document everything, the phone, the texts, anything tying Nathan to this." I nodded, though she couldn't see, and murmured agreement. Document everything. Like my life was a crime scene, every moment with Nathan now evidence. Sarah kept talking about temporary custody, financial audits, but my mind drifted to the note. Tomorrow. Marcus had planned to come back, maybe to hurt us, maybe to take something Nathan hid. The police had him, but what if there were others? What if Nathan's debts reached further, pulling us into a web I couldn't see? I glanced at Clara, her face pale, and realized she was thinking the same. She'd seen Marcus risk herself to help, and now she was tied to this too. My choices, my escape, had rippled outward, dragging her and Hannah into the mess Nathan left. The call ended, Sarah promising to meet me tomorrow. Hannah jotted notes, her pen scratching the silence while Clara sipped water, her eyes distant. I wanted to thank them, to explain the guilt clawing at me, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, I stood again, restless, and walked to the window, peering through the blinds. The street was empty, the fog lifting, but I felt exposed, like eyes were still watching. Nathan's phone was in my pocket, a dead weight, its secrets only half revealed. I hadn't told Hannah or Clara about the text, not yet. They were too raw, too humiliating proof I'd been blind to the man I loved. I turned back, catching Hannah's gaze. She tilted her head, a question in her eyes, but didn't push. Clara stood, smoothing her coat. "I should go. Let you rest. Call if you need me, okay?" I nodded, walking her to the door. As she stepped outside, she paused, her voice low. "You did the right thing, Emily, getting out. Not everyone would." Her words stung, not because they were wrong, but because they didn't feel true. I'd saved Lily, but at what cost? My home, my trust, my sense of who I was, all gone. I closed the door, leaning against it, the house's quiet wrapping around me. Hannah was in the kitchen now, rinsing mugs, giving me space. I slipped into the guest room, sitting on the edge of Lily's bed. Her breathing was steady, a small anchor in the storm. I reached for her hand, careful not to wake her, and felt the fragility of her fingers, the trust she placed in me. I'd acted, fought, run, but the aftermath was heavier than I'd imagined. Nathan's betrayal wasn't just a wound. It was a mirror showing me how much I'd ignored, how much I'd lost. I sat there, her hand in mine, and let the silence swallow me. The fight drained, leaving only the ache of what came next. The morning sun filtered through Hannah's kitchen window, painting soft stripes across the table where I sat, a plate of pancakes untouched in front of me. Lily was in the living room, her giggles mixing with the cartoon jingle on the TV, a sound so normal it felt like a gift. 2 days had passed since we'd fled our house, since I'd locked Marcus in the basement and carried Nathan's betrayal in my pocket. The police had him in custody. Sarah was building our case, and yet I felt like I was holding my breath, waiting for the next crack to split my world. I sipped my coffee, its warmth steadying me, and watched Lily through the doorway. She was sprawled on the rug, coloring a picture, her small hands steady with purpose. Yesterday, I'd taken her to a therapist, a kind woman named Rachel, who let Lily draw while they talked. I'd sat in my heart tight, listening as Lily described the scary man, but also the way I'd carried her to safety. Mommy was strong. She'd said, her voice small, but sure. Those words clung to me now, a quiet anchor. Hannah was at work, leaving the house calm, almost too still. I stood needing something to do and started washing dishes, the hot water soothing my hands. The rhythm of scrubbing plates let my mind wander, not to Nathan's lies or Marcus's threats, but to the life I was starting to see ahead. I'd called a local bookstore yesterday, one I'd loved as a kid, and they'd offered me a part-time job shelving books. It wasn't much, but it was mine, a step I'd taken alone. The thought made my chest loosen, like I was breathing deeper for the first time in years. I dried my hands and walked to the living room, sitting cross-legged beside Lily. Her drawing was a burst of color, a bright house with a big sun overhead, 2 stick figures holding hands. "That's us," she said, pointing, her smile shy. I nodded, my throat tight, and traced the sun's rays with my finger. "It's beautiful, sweetheart." She leaned against me, her warmth a reminder of why I'd fought, why I was still here. I kissed her head, and for a moment, the world was just us, safe in this borrowed space. The doorbell rang, soft but clear, and I tensed, old instincts flaring. I peeked through the blinds, relaxing, when I saw Clara, her arms full of a paper bag. I opened the door, and she grinned, holding up the bag. "Brought muffins. Figured you could use some sugar." I let her in, grateful for her ease, her way of making things feel normal. We sat at the table, Lily still coloring, and Clara unpacked blueberry muffins, their scent filling the room. "How you holding up?" she asked, her voice low, careful not to carry. I broke off a piece of muffin crumbs, scattering on the plate. "Better than I thought," I said, surprising myself. "I mean, it's a mess. Nathan, the house, all of it. But I'm not falling apart." She nodded, her eyes warm. "You're tougher than you give yourself credit for, Emily." I looked down, the compliment sitting heavy. Tough. I hadn't felt that way when I was begging Nathan to listen, or when Marcus stood in my hallway. But maybe toughness wasn't about feeling fearless. Maybe it was about showing up even when you were scared. Clara stayed for a while, chatting about her garden, her dog's latest antics, anything but the night we'd survived. I listened, letting her words wrap around me like a blanket. When she left, I walked to the guest room, pulling a notebook from my bag. I'd bought it yesterday, a cheap spiral thing, but it felt important. I sat on the bed, pen in hand, and started writing. Not about Nathan, not about fear, but about Lily's laugh, the bookstore job, the way the sun hit the kitchen table. Small things, real things, pieces of a life I was choosing. I paused, my pen hovering, and looked out the window. A bird perched on the sill, its wings twitching, then flew off free and sure. I set the notebook down, my hands still, and felt a quiet shift inside me. The pain was still there, a bruise under my skin, but it wasn't all I was. I'd lost Nathan, my home, my old self, but I was finding something else, something steadier. I leaned back, closing my eyes, and let the moment hold me soft and fragile, like the first breath after a long dive. I closed the notebook, its pages soft under my fingers, and stood, stretching my arms. The guest room was small, the bed creaking as I moved, but it felt like a cocoon holding me gently as I pieced myself back together. Lily's cartoon still hummed in the living room, her laughter threading through the air, and I let it pull me toward her. She was on the couch now, a crayon in one hand, her eyes bright as she showed me her latest drawing, a tree with pink leaves, a girl swinging from a branch. "That's me," she said, pointing, her voice light, unburdened. I sat beside her, tucking her against my side, and studied the drawing. The pink leaves, so bold, so impossible, made me smile. "I love it," I said, and meant it. Her world was still wide, full of colors that didn't need to make sense, and I envied that freedom. I kissed her forehead, her hair soft against my lips, and felt a quiet vow form inside me. I'd protect that world, not just from danger, but from the weight of my own scars. The afternoon slipped by slow and golden, the kind of day that feels stolen from time. I took Lily to the park down the street, her small hand warm in mine as we walked. She ran to the swings, her sneakers kicking up dust, and I sat on a bench, the wood worn smooth by years of other mothers watching their kids. The air was crisp, carrying the scent of cut grass, and I tilted my face to the sun, letting it warm the edges of my heart. For the first time in days, I wasn't looking over my shoulder, wasn't bracing for the next blow. A woman sat nearby, her toddler wobbling toward the slide. She glanced at me, offering a small smile, the kind that says we're in this together. I nodded back, and something in me softened. I'd been so alone, so locked in Nathan's lies, that I'd forgotten this, the quiet connection of strangers, the way life keeps moving, even when yours feels broken. I watched Lily pump her legs on the swing, her hair flying, and realized I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was choosing step by step to live. My phone buzzed in my pocket, and I pulled it out expecting Hannah or Clara. It was an email from the bookstore confirming my start date next week. I read it twice, the words simple but heavy with promise. A job, a routine, a place to belong. I slipped the phone back, my hands steady, and looked at Lily again. She waved her grin wide, and I waved back, my chest full, but not heavy. The pain of Nathan's betrayal, of Marcus's threat, was still there, a shadow I'd carry, but it wasn't the only thing I held. I stood, brushing dust from my jeans, and walked to the swings, pushing Lily as she squealed, her laughter rising like a melody. Each push felt like a small act of faith, a belief that we'd be okay, not because the world was safe, but because I was learning to stand in it. I thought of the notebook, the words I'd written about her laugh, the sun, the future. They weren't just memories. They were a map guiding me towards something new. As the sun dipped lower, painting the sky soft orange, I slowed the swing, lifting Lily down. She grabbed my hand, her fingers sticky from a popsicle Hannah had given her earlier, and we started back to the house. The park grew quiet, the other families drifting home, and I felt a stillness settle over me, like the world was pausing, giving me space to breathe. I looked at Lily, her step sure beside me, and saw my own strength reflected in her. We'd lost so much, but we had this moment, this walk, this light. I squeezed her hand, my heart steady, and let the silence carry us forward, soft and whole. 6 months had passed since that night, and I was sitting at a small wooden table in our new apartment, the morning light spilling across a stack of books I'd borrowed from the bookstore. My name is Emily, still 32, though I felt older, like I'd lived a decade in half a year. Lily was at school, her backpack bouncing as she'd run to the bus, her smile brighter than I'd seen in months. The apartment was tiny, the walls thin enough to hear the neighbor's dog bark, but it was ours, paid for with my own paycheck. and that made it feel like a palace. I sipped my tea chamomile, a new habit I'd picked up to calm my nerves. The mug was chipped a thrift store find, but I liked its weight in my hands, the way it grounded me. The bookstore job had become my rhythm, shelving novels, chatting with customers, finding comfort in the quiet order of it all. I'd even started a story time for kids on Saturdays, reading picture books, while Lily sat in the front row, her eyes wide with pride. It wasn't glamorous, but it was steady, and steady was something I hadn't known I needed. I glanced at the wall where a single photo hung, one I'd taken last month at the park. Lily was laughing mid-jump, her arms spread like wings, the sky a clear blue behind her. I'd framed it myself, a small act that felt big, like claiming a moment as mine. The apartment was full of those moments now, little markers of a life we were building. A vase of wildflowers Lily picked from a neighbor's garden. A stack of library books we read before bed. A calendar on the fridge marked with her school events and my work shifts. Small things, but they were roots anchoring us to this new ground. Sarah, the lawyer, had become more than a legal ally. We'd met for coffee last week, her sharp questions softened by a warmth I hadn't expected. She'd finalized the custody agreement, giving me full custody of Lily, with Nathan ordered to pay support, though his checks were sporadic, often late. I didn't care. The money wasn't the point. The point was Lily safe and whole, her nightmares fading with each passing week. Sarah had also pushed through a restraining order against Marcus, who was facing charges beyond trespassing, now his debts and threats tying him to a larger investigation. I didn't follow the details. I didn't need to. He was gone, and that was enough. I stood carrying my mug to the sink and caught my reflection in the window. My hair was shorter now, a bob I'd cut on a whim, wanting to shed something old. The woman looking back wasn't the one who'd cowered in her own home, clutching a knife, waiting for Nathan to save her. She was tired, yes, with faint lines around her eyes, but her shoulders were square, her gaze steady. I'd stopped checking locks obsessively, stopped jumping at every noise. The fear hadn't vanished, but it was quieter, a guest I could live with. I walked to the living room, where a small bookshelf held my notebook, its pages nearly full. I'd written in it most nights, not just about Lily or the bookstore, but about me. Things I wanted, things I regretted, things I was learning to forgive. I'd never been a writer, but the act of putting words down felt like carving out space for myself, a place where Nathan's lies couldn't reach. I flipped to a blank page, my pen hovering, and wrote a single line. I am enough. It felt true, not in a loud, triumphant way, but in a soft, certain one. The clock ticked, reminding me I had a shift soon. I set the notebook down and grabbed my coat, pausing by the door to check my phone. A text from Hannah, dinner tonight. My treat. I smiled, typing back a quick yes. She'd been my rock, her house, our refuge, and now our visits were less about survival and more about family, the kind you choose. I slipped the phone into my pocket, my steps light, and locked the door behind me, the click a promise of return. The world outside was waiting, and for the first time in a long time, I was ready to meet it. The bookstore was quiet that evening, the kind of hush that settles after the last customer leaves. I was behind the counter, sorting returns, the scent of old pages and fresh ink wrapping around me like a familiar song. Lily was at Hannah's, probably baking cookies, her laughter filling that warm kitchen. I paused, a worn novel in my hands, its cover faded, but loved. It made me think of myself, not broken, but weathered, still worth holding. I set it down, my fingers lingering, and felt a truth settle deep inside me, one I'd been circling for months. I'd spent so long chasing Nathan's approval, molding myself to fit his life, that I'd forgotten who I was outside of him. His lies. Marcus's threats, they'd shattered that mold, forcing me to rebuild from the pieces. It wasn't about being fearless or perfect. It was about showing up for Lily for myself, even when my hands shook. I'd learned to listen not just to warnings, but to the quiet voice inside that said I could start again. That voice had guided me here to this counter, this life where I was enough. Not because someone else said so, but because I believed it. I locked up the store, stepping into the cool night, the stars sharp overhead. My apartment was a short walk away, and I took my time, the rhythm of my steps steady. I thought of Lily, her courage that night, her small hand in mine as we fled. She'd taught me something too. Trust isn't just given to others, it's built within. I'd trusted her fear, her instinct, and it saved us. Now I was learning to trust my own, to let it guide me through the uncertainty, the grief, the hope. Back home, I slipped off my shoes, the apartment dark, except for a lamp by the couch. I sat pulling a blanket over my lap and opened my notebook to a new page. I didn't write, just held the pen, letting the blank space hold my thoughts. I'd forgiven Nathan not for him, but for me to set down the weight of his betrayal. It wasn't a grand gesture, just a choice made in moments like this, when the world was still. Forgiveness didn't erase the hurt, but it gave me room to grow, to choose joy over bitterness, to see Lily smile, and know we were free. The lesson wasn't loud or flashy. It was simple, carved from the long nights and small victories. Healing comes when you trust yourself to keep going, even when the path is unclear. It's in the choice to plant a flower, to laugh with your child, to walk home under the stars and feel whole. I closed the notebook, my heart quiet, and leaned back, the blanket soft against my skin. The past was done, not gone, but no longer my cage. I was here now, and that was enough. I'd love to hear from you. What's a moment when you trusted your own voice, when it led you through the dark? Share it in the comments. Let's connect over these stories that shape us. If this story touched you, please give it a like, subscribe to join me for more, and share it with someone who might need it. Thank you for listening, for being here with me. Here's to healing, to finding light wherever you are tonight.